Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Dropkick Discussions podcast presented by SportsKeeda. I'm Korey Gunz, and with me again is wrestling insider Tom Colohue. Tom, you got the coffee going over there, ready for another night of talking wrestling?
No. If I do that, I'll be waking till about 3 a.m. So just rolling in as is, really.
Well, we've got Crown Jewel coming up here in a little bit more than a week, coming up on Halloween night, or I guess afternoon here stateside. And really tonight, just going to talk about kind of the state of the product as we're going into Crown Jewel, and then kind of what we see moving forward. If you caught Raw this week, not a whole lot to talk about within the show itself. So we thought tonight we would just kind of talk about the state of the WWE and really the state of wrestling as we head into Crown Jewel week, and then what we see kind of coming up here as we get the brand split going and the draft has already taken place, so we're kind of heading towards the future here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a guy that seems to always be on the thoughts and minds of fans everywhere is the Fiend, Bray Wyat. We know that he's going to be challenging Seth Rollins for Universal Championship at Crown Jewel in that last man standing match that has now been decreed that the match cannot be stopped for any reason. We saw maybe you didn't see, but the crowd at SmackDown on Friday actually saw a return of the Firefly Funhouse segment. It was a dark segment that Bray Wyatt did a little promo there that actually involved The Miz, and it was all an angle kind of leading up to the dark match for that night. So nothing that the TV crowd at home obviously saw. But Tom, what do you think about, after we saw the Seth Rollins basically burn it down and it being the Funhouse on Raw last week, we see the return in a dark segment. Do you think that we're going to see the Firefly Funhouse return on a more regular basis here in the coming weeks and be part again of Bray's character? A lot of people seem to think that, the Seth angle was going to put an end to that branch of Bray's character, but maybe not so much.
Well, it's shockingly familiar. Bray Wyatt has another house burned down by Seth Rollins, and then builds into a big championship match and maggots on the floor and all of that all over again. This feels so reminiscent of the Randy Orton feud. I don't know what it is. Bray and real estate just do not go together at all. I think we've spent more time in this podcast discussing Bray Wyatt than anyone else combined. He's the hottest thing in the industry as we speak, and this whole feud with Seth Rollins has done nothing for either man. It's been such a difficult situation for both of them. I am pretty sure we'll see the Firefly Funhouse back. What incarnation? I'm not sure. I like the idea that it's undestroyable, that you can literally set fire to it, burn it all down, and the next night it just pops up again somewhere new. I like the idea that Ramblin' Rabbit is just going to keep coming back and keep coming back, and then the Fiend is just going to keep coming back and keep coming back. But it means you're going to take a lot of losses, because that's essentially always been the Bray Wyatt thing. You get beat, you get knocked down, you come back again. You get beat, you get knocked down, you come back up again, but you keep getting beat. I'd like it if they do something interesting aesthetically. If we have the charred remains of the Firefly Funhouse, I'd be excited to see that, because I think then we could see a dark and twisted Bray Wyatt, but I think the dark and twisted Bray Wyatt that we used to see is unfortunately now behind the mask, and we're just not going to see that anymore. I'm confident we'll see a Firefly Funhouse. What it's going to be, who knows?
Well, it seems like they're trying a lot of things with the Fiend character right now in the dark. The Funhouse segment on SmackDown was a dark segment just for the live audience. And then last night on Monday Night Raw, the Fiend was involved in the dark match main event, which was a cage match against Seth Rollins. Some fans may have already seen video of this popping up on Twitter today. And the Fiend loses clean in this dark match. Now, it was a cage match, and the finish did see Seth Rollins hit the Fiend with a curb stomp and then escaped out of the cage door. So he didn't pin the Fiend, but he won by escaping the cage. he being Seth Rollins, was massively booed by the live audience, and you can hear that in the video. And the Fiend did kind of get his revenge after the match. The lights went out. They came back on. He popped up outside of the cell, put the mandible claw on Seth Rollins, and then the lights go back down again, and then the Fiend is up on the top of the stage to kind of end the night. A lot of people I saw on Twitter, there was kind of a split opinion about this. A lot of people were upset that they beat the Fiend clean. And then other people were saying, well, it wasn't meant for fans to see anyway. This was a dark match, basically, in essence, in WWE thoughts. It didn't even happen. You know, it was just a dark match for the live crowd. But you also have to think that that's kind of an archaic way of thinking. In today's age of social media, the WWE has to know that this match is going to get out and people are going to see it other than just the people there in the live arena. It's not like the house show circuit, back in the 80s and early 90s when the only people that were going to see that match or that angle literally were the people in the arena that night. So, Tom, where do you fall on your opinion on this as far as, having these dark match made events, seeing the Fiend beaten clean, even if it was a dark match, and does it make you worry about the direction they may be going with Crown Jewel?
When it comes to dark matches and segments like that, ever since the curtain call, WWE has had no excuse. They know every one of these matches, you're going to hear about it, you're going to see video, you're going to hear reports, it's going to get out. And this, once again, Bray Wyatt got beat, laid down, and then got up again. It's like he wins the match, but the match is already finished. It's like he forgets to actually win. Just stops competing halfway through. That's not a character trait I can really get behind. We had the cage match here. We have a cage match advertised for Glasgow as well, which I can only imagine is going to end the same way. Another dark match, more than likely. I also like to point out, they did the whole arena in red again, so you could barely even see the damn thing. It's so confusing. I don't understand what it is they're trying to do. And I don't want to be egotistical here, but usually I can see what they're trying to do at least. I mean, it's not like I read their minds or anything, but I can at least latch onto some part of the storyline and say, okay, this is what they're trying to do, even if they're not successful at it. Not so here. I don't think losing a dark match is a death knell. It's non-canon. It's not part of storyline. I think everyone accepts that, at least, even though the fans don't seem to respect kayfabe as much as they used to. It's a sign of things to come, and that's inescapable. Seth is winning clean. I imagine the cage was simply there to prevent the pinfall finish. Seth does have to come away with his title. That's how it has to be. And we have Crown Jewel coming up. We then have this same match announced for Glasgow after Crown Jewel. So even after Crown Jewel, the feud's not going away. Are we going to see this match at Survivor Series? Are they going to forget the idea that Brock Lesnar should defend his title? Compete title versus title. It seems like that's the plan for everything else. There's certainly no other storylines in place for the champions. So what's the plan here? I would love to know the plan here. I think part of the reason we're hearing so many boos and we're having so much discontent is because you can't even trust the process. Because where is the process? Where is the plan? Why is this happening? I do not get it. And it certainly looks like a Crown Jewel. If the match is not going to be stopped for any reason, Seth is still going to come away with that belt.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like the feud is doing Seth any favors either. I mean, it seems like it's a no-win situation. The Fiend character, I think, is being damaged, and then because of that, Seth is kind of getting the residual hate from the crowd. Obviously he's not involved in the booking and the creative, but it's not doing anybody any good.
It's really not. Ideally, in this situation, I would have let Seth Rollins have the night off at Hell in a Cell. Just not had this feud, because it really has impacted on everyone. Bray Wyatt should have been working with people lower down the card, working his way up, re-establishing his in-ring style. But there seems to be this fear of Bray Wyatt's in-ring style. He's wrestled, twice actually on pay-per-view since the days when he was tagging with Matt Hardy well more than a year ago. I think it was before SummerSlam, was it? Yeah, it was the night after the May pay-per-view when they lost their rematch for the tag titles and Bray Wyatt was gone. So it was last May we last saw Bray Wyatt wrestle. Since then he's wrestled only twice, both on pay-per-view, both short matches. One was a squash, one was essentially him being squashed, and it was hidden by a Hell in a Cell anyway. What are you hiding? Why do you not have the confidence to let this man get in a ring and fight and wrestle and put something on? Why are you throwing him at the top guy and hiding it from view? And I have worries about the red lighting as well. You can't see what's happening. And that seems to be just a stunning indictment of this entire feud and everything that's happening with Bray Wyatt right now. You can't see what's happening. You can't see forward, you can't see back, you can't see what's happening at the time. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm sure it's leaving a lot of fans kind of questioning what the direction is here. You know, maybe the WWE was caught off surprise by how well the Fiend caught on and really haven't been able to adjust. But hopefully things get worked out on Bray Wyatt's end. Speaking of Seth Rollins, the other part of that match, he had some interesting comments this past weekend at a convention. A fan in the audience asked him about Kenny Omega and a match potentially somewhere down the line between the two. And Seth basically had a comment that was essentially, he said, when Kenny Omega is done playing in the minor leagues, I'd love to have a match with him, down the road, obviously referring to AEW as the minor leagues. And this caused quite a social media stir on Twitter. And then, Tom, you proceeded to go on Twitter and tell everybody about how Seth Rollins is 10 times the wrestler that Kenny Omega is, and obviously Kenny Omega is terrible and Kenny Omega sucks, and just Seth Rollins is just awesome and is the best wrestler of all time. So would you like to go ahead and defend yourself to the masses and all of the Twitter hate that you got about how much better Seth Rollins is than Kenny Omega?
Sure. Well, first off, SportsKeeda were the ones who broke the comments from Kenny Omega about NXT being the dark matches. Everyone was saying, oh, he's in character, it's fine. Why has Seth Rollins not got the same treatment? That is biased to me, and I think a lot of people need to remember what they themselves have said. So I have no issue with the comments. He was cutting a promo. He was hyping up both men, both companies. Everybody works out. Good work from him. Good work from Kenny Omega. As regards the idea that I'm out there saying that Kenny Omega is terrible and Seth Rollins is the best thing in the world, which so many people seem to think was what I was saying, despite nothing even close to that, I posted a tweet stating that Seth Rollins is a considerably bigger draw than Kenny Omega. By every measurable metric, that is the case. Even simple things such as YouTube views on top videos, ticket sales when it comes to big arena things, WrestleMania versus Wrestle Kingdom as an example. And I don't know if people didn't understand the question, I say didn't understand the point, but I've got to say a lot of people intentionally changed what I was saying to suit what they wanted me to be saying. And it was disappointing. Usually on my Twitter feed you get such great rich debate. A lot of people follow me who completely disagree with what I'm saying. I like those people. That gets the juices flowing, gets things being creative, people get stuck in. You know this as well as I do. You jump in every now and then as well. And when it comes to Omega, people are so protective. So protective. The idea that Seth is a bigger draw than Kenny Omega is not an idea. It's a fact. It is simply the case. Any observable metric, you look at Twitter followers, you look at Facebook, you look at even who's more likely to be opening a store somewhere in the middle of rural Connecticut or something like that. It's such a strange idea to me to say that Omega is a bigger draw, because he simply isn't. A lot of people were saying to me, oh, but Seth's not the draw, WWE is. I'm sorry, what's Kenny Omega then? He works in AEW, he worked in New Japan. Are they not the draw? They raised the point, oh, he sold out the Tokyo Dome for Wrestle Kingdom. Did he do that? Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't a one-man comedy show. Pretty sure there were other people wrestling in that event, including in the main event that he wrestled in. You cannot look at Seth Rollins as one thing and Kenny Omega as another when they are doing the same damn thing. It's so confusing to me. I've watched quite a lot of Kenny Omega matches. They are... Essentially, I haven't watched much in New Japan, but I've watched quite a lot of Kenny Omega. I've watched a bit of the G1. Moxley drew me back to New Japan recently. But I would say Seth Rollins is not the biggest draw in WWE, but certainly one of the biggest. They have a lot of draws to call on. Look at Undertaker, you got Stone Cold, The Rock. They can draw on all those people. They've got Roman Reigns now, probably a bigger draw than Seth Rollins. Becky Lynch might well be giving Seth a run for his money. She's become very powerful in that regard. Kenny Omega, I would put it at third in AEW, after Jericho and after Moxley. Depending on how Hager's year is, he could potentially overtake, given on name value alone. There is a disagreement and a misunderstanding of what certain terms mean. People say to me, oh, one of the issues of Roman Reigns is that he was never over as a face. There is no over as a face. There is no over as a heel. There is only over. You are either over or you are not, and you can be more over and more over, but it's just about, and I've said this so many times, it's about making people care. It's not about making people like you. It's not about making people hate you. It's about making people care. Fact is, more people know who Seth Rollins is and care who Seth Rollins is than Kenny Omega. More people are likely to buy a ticket for a Seth Rollins fronted show than a Kenny Omega fronted show because of that fact. It's how the term draw works. It's what it means.
So, once again, you heard it here. Tom Colohue hates Kenny Omega. You can send your hate tweets to him at Colohue on Twitter.
I've already had a lot of them. Yeah.
No, I mean, all kidding aside, look, I think you said it perfectly. It's not an either or. And that's the thing, wrestling fans, especially with all this WWE, AEW, everybody feels like they have to pick a side. Like, you can like Kenny Omega and Seth Rollins, or you can like Kenny Omega and also accept the fact that Seth Rollins is probably more over or makes more money or is a bigger draw right now than Kenny Omega. It may not be that way in the future. I'm a Kenny Omega fan. I would love to see Kenny Omega in the WWE at some point. I'm also excited to see what he can do in AEW, and I think, to Tom's point is well taken, that right now in AEW, Kenny Omega is probably at best the third biggest draw to the mainstream fan. You've got Jericho, you've got Moxley. A lot of people probably still recognize him as Dean Ambrose, and that's due to the WWE. Like it or not, that's why he's so recognizable for the most part. So, you can, facts are facts, and you can accept those facts and still be a fan of Kenny Omega or still be a fan of Seth Rollins and not be one or the other. And sometimes I don't get that mindset of wrestling fans that, well, if I like AEW, I have to hate WWE, or vice versa. Or if I like Kenny Omega, then, well, now I have to hate Seth Rollins because Seth Rollins, said that he was in the minor leagues. These guys are working. They're cutting promos. I really don't think there's, as far as I know, any real animosity between the two. And so, I don't know. I think people just get worked up, and maybe they just like to spread some drama on Twitter because they have nothing better to do or because it sparks debate. But you can't disregard facts in an argument.
This is true. I mean, that seems to be happening more and more. But fact is fact, and I know a lot of people are of the opinion, and opinion is going to be a strong word that's used quite a bit here, that everyone on the internet only has an opinion. No, there is still the existence of objective fact, even though right now it's not a popular thing. There is a lot of fake news out there, but that doesn't mean that all news is fake. That doesn't mean that everyone is lying to you. That doesn't mean you have to insulate yourself in this bubble and protect yourself. Fact is real simple. Not everything's an opinion. Some things are objective fact. There is plenty of evidence to back this one up. All you got to do is look for it.
Well, another fact from this past Monday's Raw and also from the Crown Jewel card is the lack of women's wrestling being present. Obviously, we know with the setting of Crown Jewel why there will probably not be a women's match on the card for that show, but they were also completely missing from Raw this Monday, which is a little bit unusual, especially in today's product and the climate that we're in. We've got a Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion. We now have women tag team titles, but no women's wrestling to be found on Raw this week. And Tom, you sent out a tweet that somewhat explained why that may have been the case.
Yeah, I sent out a tweet based on something someone had said to me about a week ago. I mentioned it in a tweet at the time, but I just couldn't go back and find it. I've been on a very busy day. But essentially the tweet stated that because there wasn't a women's pay-per-view coming up, because we would be spending a little while before Survivor Series, because Crown Jewel was up next, the women's divisions weren't really that much of a focus. I was disappointed when I heard that. I was disappointed that we had no women's matches on Raw. And I know Sasha Banks and Bayley are still getting a lot of attention on SmackDown, but I think that's more of a changing of the guard thing, and that not just for the management, but for Bayley herself. Recent changes, they need to re-establish that division in front of eyes and so on and so forth. A lot of the women were off in Australia, honouring commitments that WWE has to that country. They've done pay-per-views there before. For example, Buddy Murphy won the Cruiserweight Championship in Australia, the original Super Showdown before it was a Saudi Arabian title. But I was very disappointed that we didn't have at least one women's match. You still had people there. You still had people who can wrestle, who can put on a good show. And there was a lot going on in Raw. There was a lot of people who you wouldn't normally see on the cards. You had Ricochet and Drew McIntyre's return. You had Ric Flair there. That was to work towards Crown Jewel. You have essentially any tag team bout of any kind right now is working towards Crown Jewel, because they have that big match. You had the Cain Velasquez segment. You had Seth Rollins against Humberto Carrillo. So that was an interesting one. And certainly a lot of people are getting opportunities, and that is very good for them. So in that regard, it was a good Raw. But to not even record a couple of backstage segments, you could have pre-recorded that. You could have set something in motion. You could have had Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross saying goodbye. But what we had just didn't cover any of those bases. Women just were not on Raw. I've heard also that Vince McMahon is still trying to get a women's match on Crown Jewel. He worked until the very end for Super Showdown for that exact reason, that they were hoping to get Natalya against Alexa Bliss. It didn't happen. There is still a hope that that can happen this time, but the hope seems to be entirely in WWE's court, not Saudi Arabia.
Well, let's talk about now some potential new competition stateside for the WWE. We had an announcement just this week that New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to start a subsidiary that is based right here in America. It's actually called New Japan Pro Wrestling of America. They're projecting to start somewhere in late this year or maybe early 2020. But what I wanted to ask you was, when you heard about this move, do you think that it's a good move for New Japan to come and try to start, kind of a subsidiary promotion in the United States when you've got AEW, obviously is very popular and is trying to fill that void of competition for the WWE. New Japan does very well for itself in Japan, and has carved out a very nice market for itself over there. But when I heard this news, I just wondered, are they maybe expanding a little bit too far out of reach? Does the New Japan label or brand really reach or have that much resonance stateside? And because of the rise of AEW and even promotions like Impact, and obviously now we've also have NXT, which is live every Wednesday, is there going to be a lack of available stars to fill out a New Japan roster that would draw the casual or common American wrestling fan?
It's a difficult one to answer. New Japan is definitely taking a big risk here. They are going to be directly competing with AEW, with NXT, with Impact, with Ring of Honor to get those hardcore fans. So they won't be taking from WWE, they're more casual fans, but they will be taking from all of this new competition that's risen recently. It's a risk, but I think, to be honest, AEW is the one that's in the way there, and New Japan were always planning to do this. The American expansion has been very long term. That's why they have a US title. It's why Kenny Omega was pushed as hard as he was. It's why Jay White's been pushed as hard as he is. And I know that Jay White is a particular favourite in WWE. I have been told numerous occasions that Vince McMahon would rather have Jay White than Kazuchika Okada if he had the option. And I think Jay will definitely be one of the people at the forefront of New Japan of America. When it comes to lack of available stars, I'm not sure. There are a lot of wrestling talent. There are so many star power fueled people who could take this shot. But there is a limit. There is definitely a limit. And what this means is it's going to be very good for the wrestlers, but it's going to cost more and more and more to sign big stars who you can build a company around. It's going to cost more and more and more. And you've got that race to bankruptcy that will eventually set in. I think Ring of Honor's in a very difficult situation right now. They may well be a victim of this. Impact seems to be doing very well. They have locked stars down. I doubt New Japan would launch this without a number of contracts in place. Given how quickly it's supposed to be coming as well, there is not much of 2019 left. I'm not sure it's the best move. I think maybe they should have evolved their strategy based on AEW, Impact doing incredible work at the moment, and the NXT move, but maybe it was just too late. Maybe it was just too late. Everything was already in motion. They'll put on great shows, but New Japan used to be the show that you tune in when you want just pure great wrestling. Now there's so many offering that exact thing.
Last thing I want to touch on tonight, some unfortunate news that came out yesterday, was that Xavier Woods of the New Day apparently sustained an injury in their cross-country tour. Apparently it's an Achilles injury. As of us recording here tonight, I haven't heard anything, and if you have any updates, Tom, obviously feel free to share, but I haven't heard anything as far as the severity of the injury, if it's something that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time, if it's something that surgery is going to be required. But he was pulled off of the rest of the tour and was brought home because of the injury, and Xavier even tweeted out on his Twitter handle about him having the injury and having to be pulled off the rest of the tour. First thing I want to ask you, if this is a long-term injury and Woods is on the shelf for the next 6 months, let's say, what do you see as some of the long-term ramifications as regards to some of the plans that SmackDown maybe had for the New Day, and maybe even for Kofi Kingston in particular going forward, and how would this kind of throw a monkey wrench into those if it is so that Woods may be out for an extended period of time?
We're both sports fans. We both know what an Achilles injury means. It's a long time on the sidelines, and with the style of Xavier Woods, it risks being aggravated again in future. He may have to change how he wrestles. That would be a real shame. He's very exciting in that ring. When it comes to the New Day, when it comes to Kofi Kingston, I'm immediately concerned that their plans are simply going to be put to the sidelines. because New Day as a tag team is more valuable than Kofi Kingston as a singles guy. That's why Kofi Kingston took so long to become a singles guy again. New Day are a marketing machine. They can sell anything. They can hype crowds. They are always popular. They are too important to have separated in that regard, which means you have to have them in the tag division. If only Big E can be in the tag division, they ain't in the tag division. So they need Kofi Kingston. I hope they can juggle or at least work out their storylines based on this. I would imagine they're going to be calling up and trying to get the Usos back moderately quickly to sort of cover for this. But I am concerned. And it's a real shame. If there is an MVP of wrestling at the moment, it is undoubtedly Xavier Woods. He brings the product to so many new eyes. He advertises way beyond the casual market that they've already got. He's incredible in the ring. He's such a good ambassador for wrestling. Everything you love about wrestling, Xavier Woods has so strong. I really hope it's not as bad as it seems, and it really made me sad to see what he tweeted was an image of the Achilles injury, just the concept, and the word sorry. He wanted to say sorry. That breaks my heart.
Yeah, it really was unfortunate to hear, and I agree with you about Woods and his talent. Actually, shameless plug time, but actually a couple months ago I wrote an article for SportsKeeda.com. You can go check the archives there if you'd like to look it up. But the title of my article was that Xavier Woods is the most talented man in the WWE right now. And that was and still is my opinion, that overall, I'm not just talking about in-ring, but to your point, he can definitely go in the ring. That's no issue. Anytime he's gotten a chance, whether it was tags or singles, he's always proven himself in the ring, can put on great matches. But his reach with the outreach programs that WWE has, his YouTube channel, the Up Down Down, and his gaming. I even made the argument in the article that in some circles he's probably more well known for his gaming and for his YouTube channel than he is for wrestling. There's people that are in that circle of gamers and and kind of in that niche that may have not even realized that he was a wrestler before they saw his YouTube videos, and then maybe found out after the fact that, oh, he also is a wrestler for WWE. And I don't think there's anybody on the roster right now that has that type of crossover appeal that he has, and the crossover success. I mean, he hasn't quite made the leap of a Rock or John Cena where he's starring in movies, but he has done voiceovers for cartoons and for video games. And I think he could probably hold his own on a movie screen if someone gave him that opportunity as well. So I really think he's been one of the more underutilized guys in the WWE. Kofi Kingston may not have even ever been WWE champion if it wasn't for Xavier Woods kind of being his hype man. I think he kind of filled in that promo gap where Kofi somewhat lacks on the mic a little bit, or that at least has been one of his weaknesses that fans and even people in the WWE office have probably pointed out. He kind of was his de facto Paul Heyman. He was the mouthpiece of Kofi Mania. Yeah, and so, I think even his importance to the New Day group and Kofi, even as a single star, goes unnoticed or unappreciated. He's just a wildly talented guy in my eyes.
Yep. When it comes to that, Woods and Big E were not just hype men. The entire time the New Day has been together, they have been consistent on Up Down Down, on WWE programming. Big E and Xavier Woods did not care about singles glory. Their only intention, the only thing they had left to tick off, was making Kofi Kingston a WWE champion. When people say to me, oh, New Day are going to split up, Big E's going to turn on Kofi Kingston, not on your life. If I can shameless plug myself, I had an article, I believe it was way back when it was PW Torch, I was doing an article there. The biggest losses, the people that the WWE could lose, who AEW would benefit most from. This is when AEW was first announced. Xavier Woods was my number one. not just for that crossover and everything there, but because of the snowball effect. If you lose Xavier Woods, I think you're at risk of losing half of the damn locker room, because he is that highly respected. He is that loved. When it comes to Xavier Woods, it's not one thing, it's not the other, it's the whole package. Xavier Woods is the best package in the WWE.
Absolutely agree with you there, and I've always enjoyed being Tom's hype man here on the podcast, and so I appreciate him being with us again this week. Appreciate you joining us on the SportsKeeda podcast here on Dropkick Discussions. If you want to follow Tom on Twitter, obviously, as you've heard tonight, there's a lot of interesting activity that goes on there every single day. You can follow him at Colohue. If you're so inclined, you can follow me on Twitter at Korey Gunz, and make sure that you subscribe to the SportsKeeda Wrestling YouTube channel so that you can get all the notifications about when new episodes of our podcast drops, as well as a lot of cool content like Gary Cassidy's interview series. Just this past week, he's had interviews up with Sami Callihan, TJP, a lot of good stuff going on over there. And like I said, of course, you can always check out Tom's work there for SportsKeeda, also PW Torch and the like. Tom, anything you want to add before we get out of here? I know that our listeners won't hear from you until probably after the Crown Jewel show. You won't be with us on next week's episode, but I'm sure you'll be joining us soon after that. So anything you want to leave with us before we close the show?
Well, I probably, and I should point this out, I will not be watching Crown Jewel. I will not be covering it on Twitter. I didn't watch the last show. I just was made aware of what was going on with The Undertaker and Goldberg. So, that was a car wreck. I was out having a drink instead, so I think I'll do that this time as well. We'll see what happens. If they can get a women's match on the card, I might be more inclined to watch it, but don't expect too much coverage from that on my Twitter.
I have a feeling that after the Seth Rollins Fiend match, we'll probably all be needing a drink. Well, we appreciate you joining us again on Dropkick Discussions. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we will see you guys next time right here on Dropkick Discussions presented by SportsKeeda.